Phosphor Dot fans, Earl at thelogbook.com back on the Odyssey2, always up for showing some Odyssey2 love. I have some really cool things to show you. First off, we have Killer Bees, which was one of the very last games created for the Odyssey2 in North America. I think it was down to this and Power Lords, and that was the end of the line for the Odyssey2 as far as North America was concerned. Now, it had more of a following in Europe and in South America, but we're talking about 1983, 84, somewhere thereabouts. The machine was already the hardware was already heavily discounted because it had stuck around into the age of ColecoVision. And, 83, you're running into the Odyssey2 is sharing space on the planet with the Famicom, even though the Famicom had yet to come to the US. So, Killer Bees was one of the last cartridges for the Odyssey2. Here's my original. It's just so you know, I don't... the Odyssey2, I actually do maintain this collection. Yeah, I normally say that I am done collecting and I'm all about playing now, but... no, this is a complete copy of Killer Bees for the Odyssey2. And it's a wonderful little game. This was programmed by Robert Harris, formerly of Milton Bradley, where he had worked on some games for the TI-99 4A computer. I interviewed Bob for Classic Gamer magazine way back when. This is how I come by all this knowledge. Bob had done a couple of the educational games for the Voice, for that first wave of games for the Voice of Odyssey. Nimble Numbers Ned, Sid the Spellbinder. He had been involved with those, and I believe he had also pitched in on the display scheme for Type and Tell, but not the rest of it. So he kind of came on board with the Voice of Odyssey2, and he was part of that Knoxville-based group of in-house programmers whose names were not Ed Averett. And as such, what you see Bob doing here is a lot of things that break out of kind of the Ed Averett box that dominated the thinking behind a great deal of Odyssey2 games. You have a score into the thousands. You have 3 lives. You have an arcade-style attract mode. And your title screen, you noticed, just said Killer Bees. It did not say select game. So Bob was kind of bucking all the trends here, all at the same time. And while you can possibly say maybe this is somewhat inspired a little bit by games like Centipede, put a pin in that. It's going to come back later. This is really its own animal, its own winged animal, its own breed of bee. So let's give it a shot. Let's play it and see what it looks and sounds like. You have a swarm of bees, and you are trying to take down the bee-bots. Killing the bee-bots gives you an activation of this, I believe it's called the Stingray. You get a bonus multiplier based on how many of your bees survive a wave. The movement of the bees becomes constrained, and this is a bit of the centipede element. It becomes constrained by the grave markers that are left behind by the last robot that you killed. Now, when the bees are green, they are, to quote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, mostly harmless. If your swarm of bees comes into contact with any other swarm of bees, you will start to lose bees. Ooh, it's close. When the bees change blue, they are protecting the robots. They are more actively guarding them. If they turn red, they are in attack mode. Oh, see, I lost some of my bees. It's a sting operation. Oh. And I don't have a new activation of the... Oh, indeed. So I didn't have my stingray there to repel the bees, and so they just got to where they were coming after me. So you really have to... Yeah, it's easy to knock out like 2 or 3 bee bots real quick. Do you want to do that, though? Because killing them is how you get the ray. If you leave yourself without a way to get the ray easily later in the round, you are not in a good position. So you really have to balance how quickly you want to take out the robots. Let's play again. It's not like someone giving you a raspberry. Okay, bees. Oh, I missed. Oh. Oh. Uh-oh. Didn't do great there, but I did something. Alright. The robots slow down as you sting them more. You can use that to your advantage. But also, it can become a disadvantage. If they are moving too slowly and they are being guarded, you're in trouble. Alright, knocked those guys out. Alright, this guy's going in a loop. Oh. Oh. So it's a really tricky game, and there is strategy to it. You really have to... are you trying to take out the robots? Yes. But they are also a resource that you have to marshal a bit. Oh. Okay, so you see, I've got a problem. Those... They are, popping fresh dough. I'm in trouble. Mad bees. Oh, beam me up, please. Oh. So you kind of get the hang of it. It's a really interesting little game. Now, I am playing it in emulation, so it is emulating joystick controls. Let me show you something a little bit uncommon that makes this a whole different game. The earlier models of Odyssey2 had a 9-pin connector, not unlike an Atari 2600, for the controllers, meaning you could swap out the controllers. Later models, the controllers were still swappable, but you had to open the whole case. It was more or less hardwired, because the connection was inside the case. But if you have an earlier model, and you're extremely lucky, maybe you can track down one of these. This is the Wiko Command Control Odyssey2 trackball. In a box. I really wonder what the story is behind this, because I don't think these went to mass market. And yet there's packaging. There's professionally produced packaging. This is not, the packaging is not homebrew. This is how it came to my collection. This is the real deal. And you see on there, trackball for Odyssey2 model. Let's open it up, see what happens. Now, it has its own AC adapter. This is an aftermarket AC adapter that I got from Radio Shack, and I had to entrust the life of this extremely rare trackball because I think the number of these known to exist it's still a 2-digit number, and it's not a very high 2-digit number. There's not many of these. I entrusted a TV station engineer friend of mine with the task of figuring out what the polarity was on the plug that was needed to use this trackball. Now, obviously, I can't plug this in and use it with this emulator, sadly. But this is an exceedingly rare piece of my Odyssey2 collection. And the really cool thing is, this is just about the only game that it works with. Because you think about it, most Odyssey2 games are made for a 4-directional joystick. If you tried, and I can tell you from experience, you try playing Pickaxe Pete with this puppy, you're playing a game of Drunk Goggles Pickaxe Pete. Killer Bees is about the only game it's good for, and it makes it a whole different game, because then kind of the parallels to Centipede do start to come into play. And you could see from the demo, you really do need a full range of motion and not just 4 directions to really make this game sing. And so I have no idea if Harris knew that there was an aftermarket controller, because I don't think Wiko did any other controllers for the Odyssey2. If they did, it's the first I've heard of it. But they did make some of these. Now, it's possible that what happened to the rest of them is that they swapped out the pins, the pin ins and outs on the jack, and sold the rest of them as TI-99 4A trackballs, which was the only other Wiko Command Control trackball model that had an external AC adapter. Again, owing to the fact that of the 9 pins that it connected to, it wasn't getting juice through those. It wasn't getting power, not enough to power the trackball. The 2600 trackball did not have an AC adapter. So, again, just a really rare thing. This came to me just by chance. The first year I went to the Oklahoma Video Game Exhibition, the OVGE, in 2003, a gentleman came up to me and said, "I bet you don't have one of these." And I said, "Yeah, you bet your sweet bippy I don't have one of those." And he said, "I'm willing to sell it." And so we worked out a really equitable deal, to be quite honest. And one of his things that he wanted me to do was to make sure that it didn't just sit in a closet or sit under glass all the time. And so nearly every OVGE after that, I almost always brought an Odyssey2, at least one, and an old school tube TV. And at least one Odyssey2 would have Killer Bees running on it with this trackball. People could walk up to it and play it. They could lay hands on it. They could experience it for themselves and not just take my word for it that it's a thing that exists. And so, while I do tend to say these days I've given up collecting for playing, the Odyssey2 collection I have maintained because that's my system. That's the system that lives forever in my heart. And absolutely the rarest of anything that I have for the Odyssey2 is that trackball. And that trackball is only good for this game.